Here we are going to talk about the SQL, the structured query language, and sometimes people just call it SQL. So SQL is the tool for users or applications to communicate with RDBMS so that they can perform some interaction with databases. Although SQL is an international standard, but however, the SQL syntax supported by different RDBMS are slightly different. So in the future, if you are going to communicate with the RDBMS, then what you need to do is to go to their documentation and take a look at their their version of SQL. But in general, the syntax of SQL is like generally the same. But however, some specific syntax will be a little bit different. So, but however, like I mentioned, the basic syntax for data retrieval are generally the same. But however, some of the operations and are supported by different RBMS. The way they write it are a little bit different. So this data retrieval syntax has three lines, or you can say three parts. The first part is the select, second is from, and the third one is where. So the select over here means that what attributes to select, what kind of attribute that you want to select from the relation or from the table. So, and you can imagine, or you can, based on what we just mentioned, the select over here actually is similar to the functionality of projection in the relational algebra. So which means that the projection over there is the selection, the select over here. So it selects the attributes or select the columns to return to the user. And after that, you need to specify which table that you want to select the data from. So the from followed by the which table that you want to process. And finally, as you can see here, we have a bracket over here to indicate that this part is optional, or this part is optional. So from time to time, you may not need to set some conditions to select the specific record. But if you want to specify the condition to select the records, then you need to put where. Okay, so you need to put where, and then you can like specify the conditions to satisfy. So as you can imagine, this part, the conditions to satisfy, is for selecting the tuples, or you can say the records. So based on what we just mentioned in the relational algebra, this part is actually correspond to the you can say the selection in the relational algebra, which is by denoted by the symbol sigma. So, let me repeat it again. So basically, in the relational algebra, we mentioned the projection and also the selection. And the projection match with the select in the SQL, and the selection in the relational algebra correspond to the where condition over here. Okay, so basically, the select from where is a very, very important syntax for the SQL query. And as I mentioned, different DBMS system has a little bit different SQL syntax. And here, let's give you guys an example of the MySQL SQLs. So, for example, if right now you want to show all the databases in the MySQL database management system, then what you need to write is show databases, and with a semicolon to finish the command. And then if you want to create a database, then what you need to write is create database, and then put your database name, the database name that you want to create, and then followed by a semicolon over here. And then after that, if you want to choose this database to work on, and then you need to specify that database by using the database name. So here you need to specify the use, and then followed by the database name and semicolon. And when you move on, or when you select, after you select this database, then if you want to show all the tables in that database, then what you need to do is to click key in show tables and with the semicolon as well. And then if you want to create a table, then you can just key in the create table, and with the table name, for example, the pet is the table name over here, and then with the breadth over here to indicate the table schema, the structure of that table. So if you still remember, the table schema or relation schema includes the name of the attributes and also the data type of the attributes. So for example, the first column is what we call the name, and then the data type for that for this column is called varchar 20. So which means that is the string with the length of 20. And the second with a comma over here, and then followed by the second attribute, which is owner, and then you need to also specify the data type, which is also varchar 20. And then after that, the third one is species, and then the fourth one is gender, and the last one is birth. And then, of course, you need to specify their data types as well, which are the varchar 20, char1, and date. And supposedly, here is a missing semicolon over here, so you need to put the semicolon as well. And then if you want to view a certain table schema or relation schema, then what you can do is you can say that you can key in the describe with the table name. So describe pet and with the semicolon, then supposedly the MySQL or the RDBMS should be able to describe you the table schema that the user or the programmer key in when they create that table. So which is the table schema that we just entered. And then after you have a table, then if you want to create a tuple in that table, then what you can do is you can key in insert into, and with the table name over here, so which means that we are going to insert a record into the pet table over here. And then you need to specify the values for that tuple, and those values are you can say enclosed in the brace, and with the value for each of the field, for each of the column, you can say. So the first one corresponds to the name, is the Garfield. The second one corresponds to the owner, is the Jen, and the third one is cat, corresponds to the species, and the fourth one is M, which indicates male for the gender, and the last one is a date for the birth. So that is the way you can create a tuple. And then let's move on to the query. So to retrieve some data from the database. And if you want to retrieve all the data from a table, then you can use the select and with the star sign over here, and which means that everything, you are going to select everything from the pet table. And then with the semicolon, then you will have a table, have all the content in that table. Then if you want to select if you want to retrieve a particular tuples, so in this case you probably need to want to specify some condition for filtering to filter out the specific content. So in this case, what you can do is you can select everything. This everything means that all the attributes. I want to select all the attributes from the pet table where the name equals to Garfield. So in this case, only the names with the Garfield will be returned, and then all the attributes of this tuple or list tuples will be returned. And if you want to retrieve the particular columns, and then in this case, like we mentioned earlier, the select in the SQL is the projection in the relational algebra, which means that it can help you to only return the particular columns. Then in this case, if you want to just return the name and owner attributes from the pet table, then what you can do is you can key in select name comma, owner from the pet table, and with the semicolon to end it. So that is a way to, well, some examples of the MySQL queries. And then right now, if the query that you want to execute require the information from two tables, then in this case, you probably need to join those two tables together to answer your query. Then there are different ways to do it in the MySQL, and one way is to use the inner join operation. So let's take a look. If right now we want to select the pet species and owner's gender and owner's birth. For example, if we want to analyze, so for example, how the age of the owner and their gender, and then to identify whether they like to like to have what kind of species of pet. For example, maybe a young lady wants to wants cats, and then old man wants dog. For example, like that. So if you want to collect those information, then this is one way to specify the query. But however, although as you can see, these are the information that we need. But however, this information locates in different table. So the species of the pet is in the pet table, and gender and birth of the owner was in the owner's table. So in this case, we need to perform the join. So one way to do it is to use from as well, from pet table. Then this pet table inner join the owner table on a certain condition. That condition is the pet dot owner ID equals to owner dot owner ID. So that's just assume that in the pet table we have a foreign key which is called the owner ID, and then in the owner table we have a primary key which is called owner ID. So we can use this primary key and foreign key to combine these two tables. Okay, so this is one way to specify the join. And the other way is like this, and which is actually what I usually write. Well, the reason that I usually write like this is because to me it's easier to remember, and also that the logic is pretty similar and pretty simple actually. So as you can see, we want to retrieve the same data, which is select pet.species and owner.gender and owner.birth. And I want to collect this information from two tables, so I can specify from pet, comma, owner. So it's just simple like that. I want to select the information from these two tables. And then I need the join condition is specified in the where. So as you can see, where the pet.owner ID equals to owner.owner ID, and with the semicolon to finish this query. So basically, the join condition can be specified in the where as well. And finally, you can get the same result as the first one, as the first inner joined first query by using the inner join operation. And if you want to delete all the tuples from a table, then what you can do is you can specify delete from the table name, which is the pet table, for example. So you can specify delete from pet and semicolon. And if you want to delete just a specific tuples from a table, then what you can do is you can use the where to specify the condition. So for example, you can write down the delete from pet where species equals to cat. So in this case, all the pets will be removed from the pet table. And if you want to delete an entire table, then including its content, then what you can do is you can use drop. So you can write drop table and with the table name, for example, pet over here. And finally, if you want to remove a database, then you can also use drop as well. So you can write down drop database and with the database name. And finally, by using the semicolon to close this query. So basically, these are some examples of the MySQL queries for your information. And hopefully, through these examples, you can know that how to write some basic SQL query to communicate with database management systems. And in return, the database management systems can help you to manage the data that you stored in the database.